It was early morning, and a cool breeze blew over the lake. The sun had just risen, casting golden light on the water. Laughter and chatter filled the small beach. The annual boat race was one of the best days of the year for the locals. Everyone was excited. Colorful boats lined the shore, and the smell of fresh bread and coffee came from nearby stalls. Kids played with red and blue balloons, and adults made friendly bets on who would win. One of the racers, a man with a big smile, stood by his boat, checking his paddles. He adjusted his helmet and turned on the small camera attached to it. "I want to record everything," he said, laughing to his friend. His friend shook his head and joked, "Just don't fall in." Everyone laughed. The day felt alive. The lake looked calm, like a mirror reflecting the sky. No one could guess that in a few hours, this peace would turn into fear. The racer walked confidently to the water. He'd been in this race for years and was always one of the best. Today, he was sure he'd win the trophy. When the whistle blew, the boats shot forward like birds on the water. The crowd cheered and clapped. His boat moved fast, his paddles hitting the water with a steady rhythm. Everything was perfect. The camera on his helmet captured it all, his smile, his quick breaths, and the beautiful view of the lake that seemed to stretch forever. The night before the race, the racer went to bed early, like always. But his sleep wasn't peaceful. In his dream, he was in the middle of the lake, alone in the dark. The water around him was black and heavy, like something alive was breathing beneath it. Then he heard a sound, like a whisper from deep below. The words weren't clear, but they filled him with a strange fear. In the dream, something cold wrapped around his ankle and pulled him down. He woke up with a scream, his heart racing, struggling to breathe. It took a moment to realize he was in his room, not in the lake. When he woke up in the morning, he tried to forget the nightmare. It was just a dream, he told himself as he got ready for the race. But something in the back of his mind wouldn't let him relax. It was like the whisper was still in his ears. When he got to the lake, he smiled and joked with everyone, but one of his close friends noticed his eyes looked a little worried. "You okay?" the friend asked. The racer nodded and said, "Yeah, just didn't sleep well." His friend didn't say more, but he felt something was off. The race was at its peak. The racer was still ahead of everyone. The crowd was shouting his name, full of excitement. The lake was as calm as ever, but then something changed. His boat shook a little, like something had bumped it from below. He paused and looked at the water. He saw nothing, just his own face reflected on the surface. Probably a fish, he thought, and started paddling again. But a few seconds later, the boat shook again, harder this time. His heart beat faster. The camera on his helmet was still recording. He looked around, but no one was near him. The other racers were a few meters behind. Suddenly, he felt something cold and wet wrap around his ankle, just like in his dream. He looked down in panic, but there was only water. He tried to calm himself, but the boat shook again, so hard that he lost his balance. The crowd on the shore was still cheering, but now their shouts sounded worried. His boat tipped to one side, and before anyone could do anything, it flipped over. The lake swallowed him. A few people ran toward the water, but the lake was deep and no one dared go too far. The other boats stopped, and everyone stared in shock at the spot where he'd disappeared. A few hours later, professional divers arrived at the lake. A heavy silence hung over the beach. The laughter and joy were gone. Families stood together, waiting anxiously for news. The divers went into the water one by one, heading to the depths. The lake, which had looked so beautiful in the morning, now felt like a dark, scary secret. After what felt like forever, one diver came back to the surface. His face was pale. He was holding something, the racer's helmet, with the camera still attached. He didn't say anything, just handed the helmet to the officials and went back into the water. A few minutes later, the other divers brought up the racer's body. The crowd held their breath. His body was wet and lifeless, but something about his face was strange. It was like a deep fear had frozen in his eyes at the last moment. That night, the race organizers decided to watch the footage from the camera. They gathered in a small room a few officials, one of the racer's close friends, and a film expert. Everyone was quiet as they played the video. At first, everything looked normal. The racer's laughter, his paddling, the view of the lake. But when they got to the moment the boat flipped, they saw something that made their blood run cold. Just a few seconds before the boat shook, the camera caught something from under the water. Two pale, thin hands reached up toward the boat. Long, bony fingers grabbed the edge and pulled it down. The image lasted only a moment, but it was so clear no one could mistake it. The film expert replayed it several times. This can't be," he said, his voice shaking. "There was no one else out there. We checked everything." The racer's friend, who was in the room, suddenly remembered the nightmare. He said something was waiting for him in the water. Everyone looked at each other. The room went silent. No one dared to speak. The air was cool, but not cold enough to make you shiver. The sea was calm, sparkling under the moonlight. Gentle waves tapped against the boats like soft fingers. The nighttime rowing race always had a special vibe, a mix of excitement and friendship that brought everyone together. The rowers, wearing colorful clothes and sweaty headbands, joked and teased each other. One shouted, "Tonight, the sea is mine." Everyone laughed because they knew the sea never belonged to anyone. The boats lined up on the water like light birds. Small lights blinked on each boat's tip, looking like stars on the ground. The judge blew a loud whistle, and the race began. Paddles hit the water in a fast rhythm. People on the shore cheered, waving handheld torches that sent light dancing across the waves. Everything felt perfect, like a night everyone would remember forever. The boat we're following was a single rower's boat. The rower was known for his smile. He didn't talk much or brag, just rowed like he was friends with the sea. Tonight, he paddled steadily, his boat gliding like a quick fish. A small camera was fixed on his boat, one of those used to record the race's exciting moments. He looked at the camera, smiled, and mumbled something no one could hear clearly later. Half an hour into the race, the boats were far from shore. The coastline was just a thin strip of light in the distance. Then the fog came. At first it was a thin layer, like breath on a cold window, but it grew thicker, making it hard for the boats to see each other. The judge used a radio to tell everyone to slow down and check their radars. The rower in our boat didn't seem worried. He kept paddling with his usual rhythm, humming a quiet tune. The radars showed each boat as a glowing dot on a screen, like tiny heartbeats. One judge watched the screen closely. Everything looked normal until one dot blinked and vanished, just for a second, like a glitch. The judge blinked and looked again. The dot was gone. He grabbed the radio and said, "Boat number 7, report your position." No answer, just static, like short, strange breaths. The judge called again, louder, still nothing. Other rowers got worried. One who was closer shouted, "7! Where are you?" But the fog swallowed all sounds. It felt like the sea was hiding something. A few minutes later, a rescue boat reached the spot where the radar last showed Boat 7. Their spotlight cut through the fog, and they saw it. Boat 7 floating gently on the waves, like a cradle without its baby. The paddles were inside. The camera was still on, but the rower was gone, like he'd never been there. One rescuer got closer, heart pounding, not just from the moment, but from a weird feeling he couldn't explain. It was like something in the fog was watching. They checked the boat. No signs of a fight, no broken paddles, no scratches on the sides. Only one thing was odd. The camera was still running, but its screen showed wavy lines, like something was messing with it. The rescuers towed the boat back to shore. Everyone gathered, rowers, spectators, judges. Rumors spread like ripples. Some said the rower fell into the water. Others thought he sank. But the boat was fine, and the sea was too calm for anyone to drown unless they wanted to. The next morning, race officials met to watch the boat's camera footage. They sat in a small room with an old monitor that hurt your eyes. No one spoke, just the hum of the monitor's fan. One judge pressed play. The video started with the rower's smile. He looked at the camera, said something, and laughed. Then it showed him rowing. The sea was calm, waves dancing under the boat. For a few minutes, everything was normal. Then the fog came. It crept into the frame like a curtain slowly dropping. The rower kept going, but he stopped humming. He seemed to sense something. At minute 11, the screen shook, not like a wave's shake, but like something hit the boat. The rower turned, staring into the darkness. The camera showed nothing, just fog and water, but his face changed. His smile was gone, and his eyes were full of something you could only call fear. At minute 12, the screen went blurry. Wavy lines danced across it, like a signal was breaking. When it cleared, the rower wasn't rowing. He stood in the boat, staring at something off-camera. The camera stayed fixed on him. His breath was fast, like he wanted to speak, but no sound came. Then, a shadow, tall, stretched, like a human shape, rising from the fog. Not clear, not vague, just a dark line, like it stood on the water. The rower stepped back, raising his hand as if to push something away. The shadow got closer, and the camera shook. For 1 second, the image was sharp. The shadow wasn't just a shape. It had long arms, reaching for the rower, like it was hugging him. The screen went black. The room was dead quiet. One judge finally said, This can't be real." But everyone knew what they saw was more real than any explanation they could give. They played the video again, frame by frame. Something that missed before stood out. A mark on the water behind the boat. Not deep, not a wave, just a faint shadow, like something touched the surface. The police came. They watched the video, checked the boat. One officer said, "No human can walk on water. It's an illusion, or the video's fake." But the camera's technician swore it wasn't edited. Just that moment, that shadow. Days passed. Rumors grew. Some said the rower ran away. Others said the sea took him. But the old folks by the shore told different stories. Tales of shadows coming from the fog at night. Voices whispering under the water. Things neither alive nor dead. One old man, who always fished by the shore, said, "The sea's alive, and sometimes it takes what it wants." A week later, a group of volunteers decided to go back to that spot. Not for a race or thrills, just for answers. They prepared boats with better cameras, stronger radars, and a diver to check underwater. The air was like that night, calm, with fog that seemed to wait for them. When they reached the spot, everyone went quiet. The sea was still calm, but the air felt heavy, like the smell before a storm. The diver went under. He was down for minutes, and when he came up, his face was pale. He said, "There's something down there. Not a wreck, not a rock, a kind of shadow. It moves." The cameras caught nothing. The radars showed nothing. But one rower, just before they left, saw something. For a moment, a tall shadow on the water. Not clear, not close, just a shape, watching them. Then gone in the fog. Months have passed since that night. Boat 7 sits in storage, gathering dust. Its camera is off, but the footage remains. Like a puzzle no one dares solve. The rower never returned. No trace, no sign. Just that video, that shadow. People still gather by the shore, but they don't race at night anymore. The sea is still beautiful, still breathing softly. But now, everyone knows something waits in the fog. Something you can't see or understand. You can only feel it when the breeze turns cold and the shadows grow long. It was a hot summer day, the kind where the sun felt like a hug and everything smelled like freedom. The lake stretched out like a calm mirror under the blue sky, with a soft breeze tickling the leaves of the trees around it. 4 friends gathered by the shore, their backpacks stuffed with snacks and their laughter echoing loudly. Their wooden boats were ready, each painted a cheerful color, one red, one yellow, one blue, and one green. They had planned a friendly race, just for fun, something to laugh about later over campfire stories. They jumped into their boats, one of them playfully pushing another's paddle, making the boat wobble. Their giggles floated across the water. The sun was high, birds were singing, and it felt like the world was made just for their happiness that day. One shouted, "Last one to the other side makes dinner," and the others laughed as they dipped their paddles into the water. The race was on. The water rippled under their paddles, and the boats glided smoothly across the lake. The one in the lead turned back and made a silly face, while another splashed water at him, laughing. No one was really trying to win. They just loved being together under a sun that seemed like it would never set. The lake was huge, surrounded by thick forests, with hills in the distance glowing golden in the light. When they reached the middle of the lake, the breeze picked up a little. Not enough to worry, just enough to make the small waves grow. The one in the yellow boat stopped paddling for a moment and stared at the water. "Did you hear that?" he asked. The others looked at him, confused. "Hear what?" one replied. Everyone went quiet. All they could hear was the soft sound of waves lapping against the boats. A few seconds passed, then it came a faint sound, like a whisper from under the water. It wasn't a cry or a moan, but something in between, like someone or something breathing below the surface. One of them laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. Probably just a fish or something, right? No one answered, but they gripped their paddles tighter and rowed faster. The race was forgotten. They just wanted to reach the other shore, where it felt safe. The sun was still shining, but its warmth seemed weaker. Thin clouds drifted in front of it, casting a faint shadow over the water. The green boat was falling behind, and its rower called out with a grin, "Wait up! Don't leave me!" But when the others looked back, their breath caught. Around the green boat, the water was moving strangely, like something big was circling beneath it. Not a fish, not a normal wave, something that seemed to move with purpose. The air changed fast. Thick clouds rolled in, and a heavy white fog rose from the forest and crept over the lake. It was like the lake had decided to swallow them whole. One of them yelled, "We need to turn back." But no one knew which way the shore was anymore. The fog hid everything, even the distant hills. All they had was the sound of their paddles and their quick, scared breaths. The green boat was farther behind now. Its rower was rowing hard, but his boat barely moved. The others heard him shout, "Help! Something! Something's pulling my boat!" Before anyone could respond, there was a loud crack, like wood snapping. The green boat rocked violently and flipped over. For a moment, the rower surfaced, thrashing in the water. But then, something yanked him under. The water went still, and he was gone. The three others froze. The one in the blue boat, voice shaking, said, This is a joke, right?" No one answered. They all felt it. Now something in the water, something they couldn't see, but weighed heavy on their chests. They started rowing again, but the boats felt sluggish, like something was holding them back. The fog grew thicker, and the sounds got stranger. The whispers were louder now, like mumbled words coming from below. The one in the red boat started to cry. "We shouldn't have come. We shouldn't..." Before he could finish, his boat jolted. He screamed and dropped his paddle. The others only saw his shadow in the fog, struggling before he vanished under the water. The red boat floated empty. Only two were left, the yellow boat and the blue boat. Neither dared to speak. They just rowed, using every bit of strength they had. The fog was so thick they couldn't even see each other, only hearing the splash of paddles and sometimes another sound, closer now, from under the water. Something was following them. The one in the yellow boat stopped for a second and looked down. In the depths, he saw something. Not a fish, not a plant. A huge, shapeless shadow that seemed to stare back at him. His heart raced, but he couldn't look away. The shadow moved, gliding toward him. He grabbed his paddle and screamed, "Go! Go!" But his boat wouldn't budge. The water around him rippled strangely, and then he heard a voice, not from the water, but inside his head. It whispered, "You belong to us." The blue boat kept moving, but its rower was alone now. He'd heard his friend scream, then silence. He didn't dare look back. He just rowed, tears streaming down his face. The fog felt alive, like it was breathing. Something bumped his boat, not hard, more like a caress. He screamed and rowed harder, "Get away, get away!" But the bumps came again, stronger each time. Morning came, the fog lifted, and the lake sparkled under the sun again. Birds sang like nothing had happened. 4 boats floated on the water, red, yellow, blue, green, all empty. There was no sign of the 4 friends, no broken paddles, no backpacks, not even a drop of blood. The lake was calm, like a mirror with no secrets. Those who found the boats later noticed something odd. Each one had scratches on its side, like something with long claws had clawed at them. But no one dared go into the water to look for answers. The lake is still beautiful, still peaceful. But now, everyone knows not to row when the fog comes, because something waits beneath the waves, something never seen, but always felt.